Hey guys, I'm pretty sure we're on air. This is my first time hosting. This is Calaveras 32 Special. Uh, I am, helping Jelsma Outdoors out this evening, hosting, Spec Op Sunday. Uh, topics are going to be a little, not real solid tonight because we're, being that we're having to put this together last minute. But, you want to say hi to everyone there, Jelsma?
As if the mute button wants to work. But hello, all. We are on our way back to Tejas, where the sun is warm and the steaks are big, or whatever they say in Texas. But yeah, everything was pretty smooth, even though we did last minute, man. So let's have some fun tonight.
All right. That's for, I know from your live stream earlier today, you're talking of, you brought up that some interesting points about FFLs and gun shows and all this kind of stuff. And I guess, Cycle Camp has, was able to clean up pretty well considering that he's an FFL, allowing him to make purchases even though he wasn't in his home state. You want to explain that a little bit for us?
Yeah, so basically pistol sales or federal regulation. So anytime that you're trying to transfer a pistol outside of a state, you have to have that federal license or that federal license dealer to go back and forth. So me going up to Oklahoma to the gun show, if I want to buy a pistol, I can buy a pistol. I can't take it home with me is the problem. I have to do the necessary paperwork, the 4473, get the background check, all that Jazzy Jeff stuff, all the stuff that you're supposed to do. Even if it's a private sale, from what I understand, it still has to go through a FFL in Oklahoma and be shipped to an FFL in Texas, and then I can go pick it up to that FFL. Now, like Cycle Camp, he's got his license allows him to do curio and relic. So anything that's that falls in that class, like the older guns and stuff like that, he can actually pick those up, and there's no issue. So he from what I understand, he showed up to the show with no guns basically and left the show with a ton of guns. So I imagine he did really well. I actually didn't talk to him too much about what he picked up. But it would be great if everybody hopped over on Cycle Camp's channel probably in the next week or so. He'll be telling you exactly what he's picked up. He's not leaving Oklahoma until tomorrow, so I imagine it's going to be some pretty good time. We did get to shoot his moss, though. That was pretty sweet.
That is real cool. And I appreciate you giving a little bit of that explanation. I know there's some of us that, myself included, have never had to, deal with the purchasing of firearms, across state lines. So it's, and of course, with the news media as of late, trying to make it sound like you can walk into a place like that, drop some cash and walk out with no way to track it. It is, nice that you guys could demonstrate there for us that that's not the case, even though it is a bit of a pain for some of you who would like to be able to, purchase some of your own gear.
Right, and and the media builds up this thing called the loophole, the gun show loophole, and G-Webs has been going around for years doing the gun show loophole tour. And it's kind of a big joke because the loophole is this. I'm gonna define the loophole right here. Here's the loophole. You get a hold of the ATF, you get your firearms license, and you become a federal firearms dealer, right? There's the loophole. That means you get to go and get stuff transferred to you in other states. But oh wait, you still have to do the paperwork. So the only time that the paperwork does not have to be done. The 4473 and the background check is under personal sale, not going in and just buying from a dealer or from a company, pawn shop, whoever may be at the gun show. If a guy's walking around with something that says for sale on his back, I mean, you don't have to do the background check, and that is depending on your state law as well, because there are states out there that require you, and I believe it's like Connecticut's one of them, that require you to actually do the federal, the 4473 transfer in an FFL. So just like you would buy something online and you still have to do a transfer, it's the same thing. You'd have to go and transfer it with an FFL in some of those states. But a state like Oklahoma doesn't require you to do personal sale or anything like that. So, or not require you to do personal sale, but require you to have a background check for personal sale. Now, on that note, I believe that there is some responsibility of the person who is selling the firearm to make sure that the person receiving the firearm is not a felon.
All right, well, you started roboting there and cut out, but, so, hopefully when you get some better signal, you can finish that thought. But, yes, that's where I do believe you are correct on that, in the states that do allow private sales, it is the responsibility of the seller to make sure the person that is purchasing can legally own. That's where how you choose to do that check is up to you. Whether it is, only selling to people you know, or I don't know how else you would actually figure it out. Maybe, if you can, get to know them through another person, or if they own other firearms already, that might be an indication. Then, of course, you have the, states.
Because I can't hear it. Oh, there we go. Yeah. I can hear Calaveras now.
Well, that's where you robot and cut out, so I was continuing the conversation.
Oh, okay.
For the crowd, so until you came back. Can the chat still hear me? If someone pop it in, if they can hear me or not. There's a little bit of lag on the YouTube, so.
Right. I mean, I hear you good now. I think my signal picked back up. I might have hit a dip spot. But basically, what I just to reiterate real quick is that I was just saying that it's not necessarily a bad thing just to go ahead and do the 4473 and get the background check done, especially if you're selling to a person you don't know. The system is there, set in place to kind of deter a criminal from just going and picking this stuff up. So that loophole really isn't a loophole at all. It's something that the media made up just to kind of scare people into believing that guns are given away to criminals every single day, when in reality the firearms that criminals are getting their hands on are stolen or manufactured overseas and illegally imported. I mean,
negligently by the people who are doing what
right,
not what they're supposed to be doing,
or illegally obtained other ways, like straw purchasing or any other means of illegal transfers.
Yes, exactly. And that's where I was mentioning that after you'd cut out about, how you could, as an individual could verify a legal owner, whether it be a friend or, maybe a friend of a friend if you want to stretch it that far. But yeah, that's for anyone you don't know for sure, definitely including, making them do the 4473, even in a state that doesn't require it's a good idea. Connecticut, I think you said was one of them, which I can't confirm. California, I'm pretty sure. That's where in order to transfer a handgun, for sure, you have to go through a 4473 on a private sale. And as the laws have changed, long guns may or may not. That would be something I'd have to look up to be sure. But all right, I think we've pretty well wrapped up that subject. another topic that came up on the live stream today was, unfortunately because of me, the knife laws here in California, and the Patreon, the Jelsma Outdoors Patreon giveaway, where I won a knife. And let's see, I know I had to look it up to be sure, but that's for let's see here. There's specific, knives in California depend on the length of the blade. 2 inches or longer, specifically one, which unfolds or opens. A switchblade, which is basically, you don't have to touch the knot. It's a spring, it's assisted open, but you don't touch the blade itself in order to pop it open. That's where, to my understanding, that's where the Kershaws are, a bit of a loophole, because you push on a thumb stud, which is attached to the blade, and it opens up. So I believe that's how they get around that. 2.5 inches or longer blades of any type are prohibited from school grounds, and 2.5 or longer are prohibited from any college or university grounds. And that's, there's fixed blades, certain types are, commonly legal, knives under 2 inches, generally legal without restrictions. Other types, of fixed blades, like, daggers or dirks, are heavily restricted, with regards to where you can be carried, but both types are legal to own. That's for, on the larger fixed blades, the state says, a lot of, as to my understanding, a lot of parts of the state says it's legal to own, but different cities or counties can have their own, restrictions. Generally, if you're carrying a large fixed blade in a populated area, someone's going to have a problem with it, whether because you're scaring the heck out of people, or whether there, or if there's a regulation against it. But, is there anything that you wanted to kick in there, Jelsma?
Yeah. So when we were doing our 200 sub giveaway, you were obviously the winner on that one. And the knife that we actually almost shipped, even though I forgot the shipping label on it, was actually, it was a legal knife to ship to California. But like today, running around the gun show, it kind of ties into the same thing a little bit with the FFL and the purchase, and kind of knowing the laws. Is like each state is just so individually different. And when we talk about gun rights, it's like, really, we should be talking about self-defense rights, because why are our regulations so different for knives? And you're not talking something that is just like a firearm. Obviously, firearms can cause more damage than a knife can, but I'm not saying that knives aren't dangerous. What I'm saying is that really the difference in between a 2.5 inch blade and a 3 inch blade, is there really any difference there? Handle length difference, type of knife difference. I mean, there's so many things to go into with knives. It can be absolutely ridiculous. But kind of what I'm trying to get at here is, like, we looked all day to get a replacement for the 200 sub giveaway knife, that we were just basically like, dude, I'm just going to go home, I'm going to pull some out of my personal knife collection, and you're just going to get some out of personal knife collection, because either they were auto knives or they were like 6 inch blade, fixed blade knives. That's pretty much all they had. I mean, unless if you want a machete, I mean, it was pretty much like that. That's all they had. Of course, we found a couple axes and other different things, but I don't even know what laws and legality in California would be for self-defense acts, really, is what they are. But when it came down to just looking, it's like, man, it's even more difficult to do knives than it is anything else. We actually might be changing some of our Patreon perks, because I know one of the Patreon perks for the Bubba level is actually the custom engraved knife when we meet our Patreon goals. So that might actually have to change to something a little bit different that's more 50 state legal, unfortunately, because to get a knife large enough to put the logo on might be actually outside of the regulations, anyways.
Well,
If that makes sense.
If it's going to be California legal, it might have to be a custom engraved spork.
1.5 miles. Go straight. Go straight. Go straight.
Okay. Yeah, I gotta go straight here, I guess.
California Bell navigating.
Did you figure out what's going on?
Yeah, it's funny actually you bring up the spork, because I almost got the spork to review, but then I was like, I'm probably gonna break the dang thing, so I don't want to get it. So I got something else. We got some special stuff coming up with knives that are actually for review.
That is pretty, and I apologize for having so many issues with our state, in the Patreon giveaway. I do appreciate you guys putting in the effort. And that's where I think I can speak for a lot of us who were not able to make it, out there to Tulsa this weekend. We appreciate the effort that you and the other Gun Channel's crew put in this weekend. And, between the live streams and stuff you're able to show us, and then the, more structured content that'll be coming out over the next few months.
Right, we're not actually planning on stretching the content that we had that much over our YouTube channel. A lot of the content we have is going to be Instagram. We are,
Video.
yeah, we do have video that will be coming out, but it's not going to be next couple months. We're looking at maybe the next month or so, because Wanamaker is only really one page of the Jelsma Outdoors arsenal. And when it comes to our preferred content, obviously we're very pro 2A and gun-friendly channel. But when it comes down to it, we're not just here to do reviews and talk about what we saw at the gun show. So
There's so much everyone else is doing too. We don't want to step on.
right, and that's the same thing too. Is we had so many channels there that, I mean, YouTube is going to be overrun with all the content that these places that are literally nothing but gun channels. So why do we take the opportunity to pull content away from them when we have the opportunity have the opportunity to do something else, especially with the season we have, because we have shark fishing coming up and some other stuff like that. So the one thing that I did want to touch on with knives is that if people are ever considering hardcore European gun control, look at what's happening with London right now and the walks and the protests and everything about knives because of the inavailability of firearms. Okay, this may go negative or positive the way you take it, but the inavailability of firearms, people are using knives as violence because it's the easiest thing they can get their hands on. So let's just kind of look at it in a different light there, because I forgot what I was going to try to say, but anyway.
Or the other phone.
Hold on, dude.
I know. Thank you.
Anyway, we had to stop for a second. Sorry.
No worries.
Liz wanted to take some pictures of something. But anyway, so what I was trying to say is, like, look, you may be anti-gun, but if you take away guns and guns are completely gone, the violence is still going to remain there. Okay, so if it's not knives, it's improvised explosives. If it's not that, it's cars. I mean, a car is a deadly weapon if used incorrectly. They have to print labels on the back of, bags of fertilizer that say it's a federal offense to basically use this in its non-intended purpose. So there's a lot of different ways to look at things, and if we just take and say, well, if we get rid of guns and we get rid of knives and then we get rid of clubs and then we get rid of fists and then we basically leave everybody with no arms and legs, we'll be okay.
Exactly. That's where in London, of course, as you mentioned, their murder rate has actually exceeded that of New York City. And a lot of that is, through knife attacks, but also with the other items being able to use as weapons. It hasn't been that long since, I think it was Paris, where someone used a fair-sized truck. I think it was a box truck, to be able to drive at speed through a crowd, and killed people. And then someone tried to do the same thing in New York, but with the U-Haul pickup, and was less successful. And due to it was not as crowded of an area, thank goodness. But that's where, as the saying goes, evil will find a way. It's a matter of, the good people being able to protect themselves, because you will, and people talking about like some of the mental health systems and this kind of thing. We can help some of the people who are having a rough time of it, but then there are some who are just cross-wired and they are pure evil, and there's nothing you can do about them except to deal with them when they finally rear their ugly head.
Exactly, man. And it comes down to, look, if you let the people who, why is this guy pulling up behind me? Oh, so if you let the people who want to be victims forever and not allow them to protect themselves, that's fine. Let them do whatever they want. But don't take the people who actually want to protect themselves, because we all know the government's not there as the real big brother they pretend to be and help protect everybody that's out there. Okay, we all know that the police are a reactive force, that our military is a reactive force. We allow things to happen, and not we, I say as we as the government, but we allow things to happen and then react to it. Okay, I mean, there's a whole reason there's FEMA. We're not evacuating large areas that a storm could possibly come in. We wait for the storm to hit. We wait for everything to flood. Then we get everything out. And it's the same way with violence and gun control and all these other issues that we believe is an issue in the United States. Has never been an issue. We have a set gun culture and a frame of mind to be independent, to be more filled with liberty and freedom, and actually have an independence about us. Now, granted, there are areas of the country that rely on the subsistence and the crumbs and the scraps that fall from the government's table to survive. And if we develop a system that, instead of welfare or any of these other systems that help people survive, if we allow them to be self-sustainable, let's say instead of giving somebody a chicken or giving somebody some produce, we teach them how to raise chickens or how to bring produce up through the ground and grow their own produce. And I think we've gotten so far away from being self-sustainable that we're just really following into the culture of, let's do what the government should tell us to do, and let's allow the government to protect us, and let's let the government tuck us in at night, and let's let the government do this and this and this and this. And we just really need to take several steps back and look at how government is just becoming larger and larger and larger, and really think to ourselves, it's like, okay, let's just take a minute and see how we could take this big government, cut it down, and get less hands and less fingers into the things that are really affecting society today. And I think you'll see a decrease in crime, a decrease in a lot of violence today as well. And the issue of gun control, if we allow people to carry what they want to carry to protect themselves, I think you're going to see a lot of things go away. But to allow that to happen, a lot of things have to change to begin with.
Yeah, and that's where I think one of the things that also would have to change is our, the mentality of people within the country, because the government has grown so much over the years and has, instilled so much of this extra control and everything else, that people have become so reliant upon it that they don't, necessarily want to have to do it themselves anymore. I know that's where, like with the welfare program, we'll just use welfare as a broad blanket for all of the assistance programs. I know there's a bunch of different ones. I don't know all the names. But some of the people where I've actually met a few where they, at 18, they were able to get on it, and they stayed on it, either one program or another, because they would, they time out on one and they'd just shift to another one for pretty much their entire lives. So that's because they didn't have the drive to do more, become more. They were perfectly happy with just living off of something else. And until we can somehow instill back into society that desire to better themselves, it's going to be extremely difficult, to change anything else.
Right, and a lot of that is the mentality of, well, why should I do something if somebody's going to do it for me? Right. So, I mean, some of it is instilled, not distilled, but instilled from a young age when, they're just raised and everybody's doing it for it. Teachers are doing little things for them, and their parents are doing little things for them. And then it starts to develop. I was like, well, now this person does all this for me, and this person does all this for me. And, I've never had to clean my room or make my own meals or do anything. It's very simple things that leads to this large entitlement. And I know we're kind of getting off track from where we originally started with. Turn left?
Yes.
Okay. So I know we're getting off track where we originally started and everything, but a lot of this feeds back into the regulations of why handguns are regulated so much more than long guns. It's just a impractical fear that these mechanical devices are more dangerous than other mechanical devices.
Exactly. It's that they're, it does, in the entitlement and the taking care of people, it does feed back into it. People have never had to fend for themselves, so they don't want this, so it scares them when other people had the ability, so they want to take that ability away. It does all play into, it's a vicious cycle that's, that how, I don't have the answers on how we can break that cycle, but if we're going to keep this country, heading in a positive direction, it's something we seriously need to think about.
Right, and it's said everything that we ever bring up is always going to be a touchy subject to somebody, and that's fine. As human beings, we have our feelings hurt all the time, and it's not like we're intentionally, especially with some of these chats, trying to rile people up, or we're intentionally turn left.
No,
Keep going. That we're
stop so I can get this side.
that we're intentionally doing things on purpose just to kind of go out of our way just to make people angry, and that's not what we're doing at all. We're really just trying to ask questions to make people think, and the more we get people to think about things, I think the better off we are, because another one of those things about Big Brother and big government really is just getting people to stop thinking and just start doing things. You become a sheep, you follow the sheepdog and the herder. You really don't think about where you're going, because you're going to be led to greener pastures and better days in the future. And there is no answer to get rid of any of it. There's no real answer to stop crime, and there's no real answer to stop gun violence or knife violence or, suicide bombing or people running people over or drinking and driving. Drinking and driving kills more people each year than any of the, I guess, mass shootings is what you would call them, that's happened in this year so far. So there's a higher epidemic of people drinking and driving than there are of anything else in the United States. So why don't we just try prohibition again? Because we know that once we get rid of something, it becomes so valuable to criminals. So we're allowing criminals to flourish once we get rid of everything. I mean, it already happened with prohibition. We saw it happen, and it was so bad, then we had to turn it back around. So there's real no reason to just go in and tell people, it's like, look, you can't have a 2.5-inch knife, or you can't have a 3-inch knife because you live in a state where people are scared of things they don't understand.
Yeah, exactly. And that's for, unless you had a topic that we need to cover, I think probably about time to start winding this down. That's for those that, if those people that are listening that maybe haven't been able to read the YouTube chats, do you want to give a quick heads up for anyone that's maybe waiting on Gun Gals?
So Gun Gals is actually going to be canceled tonight.
No, keep going. Keep talking.
Oh, well, you said keep going, and I'm driving. Well, anyway, so Gun Gals is going to be canceled tonight just because everybody's actually going to be traveling that would be involved in Gun Gals. So I think notifications did go out, but I'm not sure. I think it got posted on some of the social media. But other than that, man, I haven't seen the chat. I know Rupan was saying some stuff earlier. But if you just want to run through the chat and see if there's anything good in the chat that we can bring up. I know we had a couple people in there that were, I think Vanessa Kitty was there, Rupan was there, and some other folks. But when it comes to the gun show and the gun show mentality and the area in there and around like these arms shows and everything, there's no illegal activity that's happening. There's no, I mean, if there is, it's very few and far between. The worst place that you think that you could go would be, oh, let's do it in secret. Well, the best place to do it would be in secret, and the worst place to do it would be at an arms show when there's literally thousands of eyes around you. And now, like the Wanamaker Gun Show had a huge media presence there. They had basically a lot of the big names of gunchannels.com as a media presence, taking pictures, taking videos, asking questions, talking to people. We had a lot of people stop by the Gun Channels booth. So when we're trying to promote a positive image of the Second Amendment, it's always us trying to relate ourselves to somebody on the opposite side, somebody who's on the other side of the field. Somebody may be on the fence, but really when we talk about promoting positive 2A, we just have to remember everybody and tell everybody and remind them that we're really just people just like them. We bleed red, and we have the same convictions about our own beliefs, and we believe that we have the right to defend ourselves. And one of those easiest way to defend ourselves, which Samuel Colt, said, I do believe that he quoted, it's the world's greatest equalizer. That is one thing that firearms do. You could be a 90-pound handicapped old person You know, and I'm not trying to go out there and say that everyone, but anyway, so you could be somebody who's very much under the strength of a 350-pound linebacker that knows jujitsu. You know what I'm saying? So the equalizer as a firearm and the equalizer as a sword or an axe or a knife or whatever it be you use to defend yourself, and it's there. So the other thing about that too is with that great power comes an immense great responsibility. We can't just go out and be the police force because we have that firearm or whatever that we use to defend ourselves. We can't just run around and be vigilante. We have to allow the system to play out, and we have to be more self-protective than anything else. So if there's anything out in the chat, I'll go ahead and shut up and let you say it there, Cal.
Well, that's for us flipping back through, and from when we were talking about the license, the FFL and the being able to transfer, or then the private transfers back at the beginning of the chat. Rupan brought up a nice point. In his state, there is a in I believe that's Massachusetts. There is an internet portal for background checks. So which would allow private citizens to be able to do a check on someone if they didn't know the person before doing a private transfer, which I think is a fantastic system. I'd love to see that incorporated in more places, so that way you could do a private transfer, and if it was someone you didn't know, you could check them out. He also made the comment he has a CNR license, which is interesting. That's where I know he's been doing showing off some of his builds and this kind of stuff on some of the other chats this weekend. It'd be interesting to see what some of his collections and relic items are. Other than that, out in the chat, there's a lot of people laughing because the way that you and Liz give each other directions reminds a lot of us other couples about how we travel, including myself and California Belle, who is actually in the chat talking with that guy's wife right now, who's also laughing.
Well, I mean, that also brings a good point. Look, we are just everyday people. That's exactly what we are. We're not, just because I'm a veteran and, an explosive tech and other things like that. I'm just an everyday person.
You got to turn everything into a sermon?
Yeah, everything's got to be a sermon.
Right, Dad.
Yeah, well, it's also getting dark and you're making me drive around a freaking cemetery. Yep. So.
Cemeteries can be nice places. I've spent, a fair amount of time in them, actually. Oddly enough, I've taken tours of them, but that's just me.
We're actually in the Mount Olive Cemetery in Hugo, Oklahoma. It's the place. I don't know if you've ever heard of Showmans Rest. Go all the way to the end.
Well, say that, not like wave me on when we come up to every freaking street that we could turn on.
But there's this place called Showmans Rest where there was a huge crash, and this was basically the hub of circuses. Back in the day during winter, they'd stay here. Go this way. And there was a huge train crash, so there's a ton of circus, people who were with the circus clowns and performers who are buried here along with their animals. And it became a very popular place to bury showmen and whatnot. And also Lane Frost is buried here. Turn left. But there's also a geocache, which is what I'm going for right now. It's very cool.
Yeah, I actually downloaded a geocache app, and I was actually thinking about getting into it. It sounds like you guys have a lot of fun doing it. I was thinking it'd be good for California Belle and I.
I have a blast doing it with our family. Shane, however, gets very frustrated with me giving him directions. Stop here and I'll get out.
It's not the frustration of the directions. It's the fact that I got to drive like 11 and a half hours.
Oh, it's
and we've stopped for almost an hour now.
It's fine. I'll be back.
No, I'm not going to unlock the back. And now she wants to stop and go tromp around. Anyway, so off subject. We'll get back to Pro 2A and how we're all like everybody else.
Right, that's your part of the Pro 2A thing. That's where California Bell was asking about, if there was any protesters, in the Tulsa area or outside the gun show. I think I heard someone mention earlier this weekend, but you were the one that was there, so I figured I'll let you answer that question.
Yeah, I mean, as far as anti-gunners and all that stuff, I didn't see anything. And I was running in and out of the show pretty much all day, so it's not. It wasn't anything that I've seen in Tulsa. But then again, Oklahoma is an extremely gun-friendly state. They're almost as gun-friendly as Wyoming, because, in Wyoming, as soon as you get your driver's license, they pretty much hand you a gun across the table. But, I think Rupan was also mentioning earlier about silhouette targets in Massachusetts, how it's illegal to shoot at a human-like form or silhouette target. So he would also mention something like that. I think it was my last chat, that the Tulsa live chat, that
when you were talking, that's when you were looking at the anatomy targets, and that's where I remember him saying that as well. It's interesting, how they've made that law. If we, heck, that's where I almost would actually like to have him on here so he could explain it more to us. Any way that you'd have time to spare for that, Jelsma?
Yeah, I mean, I got plenty of time, man. I'll get home around 2:00 in the morning, so I mean, I got enough time to pretty much chat all night. So if he wants to jump on, you can send him a link, and I'm gonna go quiet just for a little bit, but
that's fine.
I think Liz just disappeared into the bushes, so.
Hold on a second, Calvert.
But, man. Yeah, nice thing about Oklahoma is that it is pretty much a gun-friendly state. So.
Hold on one second.
No problem.
And I just threw my email into the YouTube chat. If you're interested in a link, send me an email with your, and I'll respond back to you. We'll see if he jumps in. I'm sorry, you're in the middle of saying something there, Jelsma.
No, I was just talking about Oklahoma and how gun-friendly the state actually is. I mean, there's not many states where you literally have very low regulation on how much gun traffic comes in and out, or I think reciprocity with Oklahoma. I think Oklahoma has a lot of reciprocity with a ton of states. We were reading something about I can't remember what state it is, but basically stopping people out of state with permits, basically carry permits, and those people with carry permits from out of state are banned from carrying guns in that state, period. Even though and it's like in your vehicle. If you have a gun in your vehicle and you live and you're an out of state person with a CCW, you're basically going to jail for 3 years. So.
Yikes. Yeah, that's for, it'd be interesting to know what state that is, so I can try to avoid it.
Right. I think I just gotta see it. There's Rupan. I got another notification about Rick, Nate 2009, Tardot, Snowy North, Ghost and Cycle Camp. Join the conversation. I don't know what happened with that, but that might be a different chat on something. I might have got sent another link and not even know it. So
yeah, maybe because that's where you were on a big group chat for a while there, weren't you? At the show.
No, I don't think I was actually in the chat though. But anyway, Rupan, if you want to go ahead and chime in and let us know what's going on in your state, I'd definitely love to hear it. I haven't heard from you in a while, so.
Yes, pretty much. Yeah, so recently, there's a lot of stuff going on, but I recently went ahead and printed out all 219 pages of gun laws and went ahead and went through them all. And I don't have the Maura Healey enforcement ban notice. So pretty much while reading through it, I found out that I'm not legally allowed to bring a large capacity weapon to anybody's house. Like I can't legally speaking, I'm not allowed to just like bring a gun to a friend's house if it's a magazine fed pistol or magazine fed rifle. Technically,
Wow.
I think I can bring my Glenfield 60 to like my buddy's house, but that's it. So, or something non-magazine fed. So I found that out. I found out no shooting human targets. That was kind of alarming, man. Like I can't even, like, legally speaking, you're not supposed to even shoot at silhouettes. Well, what the hell am I going to set up when I'm shooting at 600 yards? I got to buy the giant insane targets or something? I don't know. So, a little silly, but yeah. So to pop over, I'm going to try to give you a fast version of the Maura Healey enforcement notice. So in '94, we had the federal ban. In '98, they pretty much copied and pasted it, except I noticed that they left out the part about a pistol weight limit. Like that paragraph about pistols, I swear it's not here. So it's kind of like splintered a little bit in some areas. But anyways, Maura Healey in 2016 was like, oh my God, we've been interpreting the law wrong this whole time. It says right here that, I'm not going to read you the exact thing, whatever, because I got to go by all the definitions here. Anyways, she said a compliant rifle is not legal because what makes an assault weapon dangerous is the action. So these assault weapons named in the original, technically the '94 assault weapon ban, are banned by name because their actions are dangerous. So then she put a compliance test in place, and it says that if it can accept 2 or more parts with any of these weapons names, so like major firearms features, so magazine, trigger group, barrel, bolt carrier group, if it can accept 2 or more of those parts, receiver, then it is that weapon and it's banned. And she even goes to say no non-detachable magazines. So if you've somehow made it so the magazine's fixed, that's also illegal. So that was we still alive?
Yeah, we're still alive. I'm trying to process because, it seems like an Olympic level of stupidity.
Yeah, so technically, if you bought or transferred or possess a firearm from 1998 to 2016, technically you're a criminal. And she says at the bottom, and I'll quote it because I took a photo of it and posted a link on her celebrating. She was celebrating on Facebook, and I posted a little thing. It says, application of enforcement notice to individual gun owners. This guidance will not be applied to possession, ownership, or transfer of an assault weapon obtained prior to July 20th, 2016. And then right underneath it, it says, the AGO reserves the right to alter or amend this guidance. So, it's total bullshit. And, if you want to uphold the 98 assault weapons ban, you know what? That's the way it is. It's going to be it, right? But for her to completely come up with new tests, come up with a completely new enforcement way to enforce the law that's been that way since 1994 is just fucking insane. It's completely insane. People love her or whatever, and fucking Charlie Baker, a Republican governor, supports her reinterpretation, or she calls it an enforcement. So it's fucking insane. So.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that because we focus everything on California being this way left field anti-gun state, and it sounds like the East Coast and Massachusetts is basically spearheading and leading most of our anti-gun movement. We hear about things like New Jersey and stuff like that too, but really we're not hearing much about Massachusetts outside of Massachusetts, it sounds like, especially when you have to print 219 pages just to completely understand what the heck's going on with the laws in firearms.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, it's just, to me, it's like, how are these legislators not angry? Like, if they wanted to pass a new assault weapons ban, I'm completely against it. They could easily pass that shit. But no, she's got to fucking be slippery as shit and greasy. And pardon that, but it makes me, my blood boil a little bit. She's got to just, I'm going to go ahead and do all this because I can. I'm going to make a bunch of new laws, make tests, put an FAQ. She even goes to say, oh, the Ruger Mini 14 and the M1A are not assault weapons. It's like, well, does that mean that I can fucking have flash fires and bayonet? I don't know. I get real mad, so I just got to let it go, I just got to let it go,
No, and dude, I completely understand with you because both of us are native Californians. And Calaveras is obviously a little bit braver than I am because he's staying there just like you, Rupan, and fighting for a cause where I'm skipping out to Texas, and living the good life. But no, not really. But anyway, when we're fighting for our rights, this feeling is going to come up because we are those people. Like I said, we have our convictions. And those convictions are self-evident that we need to protect ourselves, and especially from a tyrannistic government and these tyrannistic leaders that we've put into office and allow people to basically run our lives for us in the event of them making money and their own self-gain.
Yeah, could you turn up my volume a little bit? Calaveras?
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to do that.
It's sorry about that. No, Jelsma. Yeah, I mean, these people honestly believe they're safer by banning AR-15s. They honestly know it in their heart. And Maura Healey said this is the safest state because of our gun control, or one of the safest states. They're just manipulating numbers, including the numbers aren't right the way they're interpreting them. But on top of that, it's like people don't know that if you had, just to say for Massachusetts reasons, you had an M&P 9, with 10-round magazines versus an AR-15 with 10-round magazines, you're not any safer if you don't have a gun. You are not any safer. And that people just don't want to hear it. They do not want to hear you say that. And it's like, this is just the truth. Unarmed people cannot fight armed people. Yeah, maybe once or twice you've seen the video of the kid at the college who disarmed the guy with a shotgun. I can't remember if that kid got shot or not, but not all the time people are even willing to run up to someone who's aiming a gun at them.
Yeah, that's true. Hold on. Ruben, do you have any idea how to turn someone's volume up? Because I'm looking, I can't figure out how to do it.
It's the green thing on the left. It's the green thing on the left. I'm almost like yelling in here. My ears are kind of screwed up, so I might not be yelling.
Okay, the only thing I see is screen share, but
yeah, if you go down a couple more buttons, there's a button there that has like almost like a soundboard, and if you click that, it allows you to adjust individual volumes.
Yeah, I don't know. It's not. I'm seeing chat, screen share, and cameraman. That's the only buttons I'm being offered.
See, you want to weird because usually on the left there's like a little control panel. I think it's called.
Yeah, I've heard people talk about it before, but
I was trying to get it to work last night and I couldn't figure out. People couldn't hear me again, and then I was like, I can't figure this out.
All right, well, sorry about that, everyone. That's kind of tough it out.
Hey, Vanessa. So, Yeah, I mean, these people, they just really believe that they are safer. They really believe in public security. Um, I'll say one thing. People act like mass shootings could never happen here. They obviously could happen anywhere. But something that we do different here is there's no like zero tolerance thing. So if someone gets kicked out of school, I was talking to a mental health professional about this, who's from Oklahoma originally, and she's saying that there's a lot of options, and they try to deal with kids that get expelled. They have like therapy programs and other weird, crazy programs. My daughter in this state is in like a special kids program for kids who, had violent outbursts or something like that. So there's like a lot of emphasis on mental health in this state, and that's really probably the only reason I think that we haven't had a mass shooting. I mean, there's not a lot of gun owners in this state. I mean, there's a lot, but there's not a lot compared to a lot of other states. But there's still suicides, man. We had a double suicide at what was the only public gun range in Massachusetts. There was a Romeo and Juliet. They left a note, double suicide. So, yeah. So now that you have to have a license now to shoot at that range, but it's just tiring to constantly have gun owners get blamed for the acts of terrorists or people who commit suicide or people who commit crimes, because people who are law-abiding gun owners aren't going to do that crime. I mean, we all know that, but it's just insane that it's just a constant. This is why we can't have nice things argument, and that is the most if you've ever been in the military, that is the most frustrating thing. Mass punishment, and then you get out and you realize that it's everywhere. Everybody wants to punish everybody for everything. So, I don't know.
Yeah,
Could be
that's
too dark.
Our society has definitely moved away from the whole idea of self-responsibility and having basically, for kind of odd way of saying it, basically you have to pay the piper for for your choices.
You were a kid when our talk to the teacher and get mad at us. Need to get your grades up. Today's kids are basically yelling at my grades up. So it's with government and the protection of the people and all our rights and everything, where back really ourselves and we need us and all the hey, you need to work confidence. Hey, it's like you need to take care of me because that's what you're supposed to do. And I mean, and it all feeds round and round, especially when we're talking about politicians skewing numbers and pulling different things. But I think we might cut out here soon. If we do, just keep on rolling, man.
Well, I was, actually running out of topics. Unless Rupan had something else he wanted to contribute, I was gonna, call it a night and let everyone, go on their way.
Well, I was saying
you
earlier.
Want to kick in there, Rupan?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep, go for it.
All right. I believe they banned online knife sales in the UK, and I just saw a post in one of my groups today. English Shooting, he's a firearms channel. There's a new offensive weapons legislation after the Mandalay Bay. They banned. I'm looking for the picture and I can't seem to find it. They banned 50 calibers, I believe, and they banned Mars rifles. Now, Mars rifles are this is 50 caliber bolt actions, because obviously they don't have 50 caliber semi-automatics. So, and if you don't know what a Mars rifle is, it's a rifle designed for someone who's crippled. So it's kind of think about it like the pistol brace, but for UK. So the only Mars rifle I've ever seen is a VZ58, and what it is you pull the trigger, the gun shoots, but then the bolt gets locked to the rear. Then you pull the trigger again, and then the bolt goes forward and chambers the next round. and then you can shoot again. So 2 trigger pulls per shot is what the Mars rifle is. So they banned that too, because that's just, because of Vegas, they had to ban more stuff. It's so crazy to see that the UK gun owners are also punished for shit that happens in the United States.
Yeah, that's where thing about with firearms for disabled people, and it was brought up earlier, but it made me think that's where Rick from Rick's Life, as I see it, he has Shooting with Disabilities chat every week, and it's not uncommon for a Wheelchair Warrior to jump in there. They talk about being that can move around a little bit without his wheelchair, but not very well. And Wheelchair Warrior is completely reliant. If they were to be attacked by an able-bodied person, without some sort of equalizer, they would be in a very dire strait. So that's where to try to say that someone like that, shouldn't have the means of protecting themselves is utterly ridiculous. If people such as themselves need to have something as an equalizer.
Yeah, I was reading a story on, again, I'm in an English shooting group, and they were saying some guy defended himself, an old timer. They called him a pensioner. It's their word for like an old retired person or something. Obviously, someone
right,
old and
a retired person. Yeah.
So the guy stabbed one of the burglars to death with a knife because the guy was gonna. He feared for his life. He thought he was gonna kill him with a screwdriver. And I believe he's being charged with murder. So it's like, what's up with this,
I heard about that one.
It's just a lot of crap.
A perfect example
they want to be defenseless.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect example of government overreach, and that will be reality here if we ever allow it. And that's for us in the gun community, and we're doing the best we can. We really need to get more people to understand that that's the reality of other parts of the world, and we're trying to convince people that it is heading that direction, so we can try to stop it. I think is the best way I can put it.
No, that's extremely well put. I mean, something that really blew my mind, and it shouldn't have, but when I was joking around before, arguing with people a couple months ago, being like, coming to a state near you, oh, no way, you're a dummy, then look at what happened in Vermont, man. Vermont is like a place I wanted to live, and now I shouldn't be surprised because of Bernie Sanders, but Vermont has like a much lower crime rate than Massachusetts. There's a guy, Manlich or Manich or something in New Hampshire who pretty much said he's like a state representative, or maybe he's I forget what he is, but he's trying to do a media push, getting everybody to vote for the same laws as Massachusetts. It's like these people are everywhere, man. And I think we're slower. The gun community is much slower, and I think it's just because a lot of the people are older. But I feel like we're starting to gain some momentum. I feel like we're getting digitized here, and I think we're going in the right direction. I think it's going to be a good thing. But you're right, man. They just keep hacking away. I heard somebody bought a revolver, and it was a California revolver, and it had double action disabled or something. I was like, you got to really think about that, man. That's going to be everywhere. If they pass the 2018 assault weapons ban, they're going to go further, because then they're going to be, at some point, they're going to go, hey, you know what? We addressed assault weapons. We need to address this much larger thing called semi-automatic pistols.
Yep. And that's where talking about it spreading from one state to another and people thinking, oh, no way it can happen. I've had that, being a Californian, I've had that, conversation with a number of others, how there's a lot of laws on the books in Texas, in maybe not Massachusetts because they tend to lead the way as well, but in Kansas and a lot of these other free-loving states, where gun laws that were originated here, that then it took sometimes a couple years, but versions of ended up in those other states, either due to population shifts or just the push to constantly make it to normalize all these laws.
And you know what? Oh, finish your thought. I'm sorry.
To normalize all these laws and ways of thinking that these other states had rejected for so long, but eventually states like California and Massachusetts had to be able to normalize those ideas and then push it on to others.
Yeah. You tell people that the 2018 assault weapons ban is going to ban almost every semi-automatic pistol. They go, huh? No. But what was the point that I wanted to make? Oh boy, just left me. The point that I wanted to get at was that, here we go. So you've got, and I have made this mistake after I got out of the Army. So I used to be anti-gun, right? There we go. Even in the Army, I was not really pro-civilian gun ownership. Obviously, I'm different now. I'm very different. But, something that happens is people put like the AR-15s on a pedestal, and it's not really, it doesn't need, I was trying to have an argument with someone who was against guns, and I tried to like compromise with him, and I told him there's no reason to own an AR-15, but I was just really terrible at debates. So, that was a couple of years ago. But anyways, you got to stop. I love it when I hear people say, oh, I like hunting, I like the Second Amendment, I have guns, but no one needs to own assault weapons. It's like, well, you're a dummy, or you're not educated properly. Stop putting these guns, on a pedestal. They're not these insane killing machines. They're civilian weapons. Or guns, excuse me. We shouldn't use the word weapon. They're civilian guns. And my argument is hunting weapons are usually much more powerful. A lot of people, it just leaves them. It's like, oh, you're gonna put down a large game animal with an AR-15? What? Or even 7.62 by 39. You want to go hunt some large game? I don't know. I mean, you probably could, but you get what I'm getting at. Like an AR-15.
Right, and that's where I've because I have a 223 bolt action as well as an AR, not chamber in 223, but it's I have that as well as I have a 308 and then a 7 Remington Magnum, where I've done that before. We're shown people who didn't know much about firearms. This was back before I had a 223, but that's where I had to do one time. I had to do actually on a computer, so it's not it wasn't quite the same. That's where you actually had I found it online somewhere, a picture of a 5.56 NATO sitting next to, I think it was like a 30-06 or something. Like, okay, this is the round fired by the ARs that everyone's so afraid of, and then this is a common hunting caliber and also the caliber used by the American GIs during World War II. And just totally surprised them that how I think it also had it had some other innocuous like office type item. It may have been a pen or something like that next to it as a size comparison for the two. And it just blew them away how small the 5.56 actually was. They thought it was going to be chambered in something much larger.
Yeah, but I mean, I think I believe that, where am I going with this? Yeah, I don't want to try to, I've already made that argument in one of my videos. I talk about it. I do like what is a semi-automatic assault weapon or whatever. And I go through it. I have my 30-06 Remington Model 4. I have my AR-15, and I have something else. No, not the VP9. I have the Canik TP9 SF. So I kind of compare those in a video, and I just try to show people. I made it specifically for one person, and they refuse to watch it because they said they don't want their stomach to churn by watching weapons of war that murdered people. And it's like, my first quick reaction, I'm not very witty at all. My first quick reaction was like, no one was harmed during the making of this video. My guns haven't killed anybody.
Right. And unfortunately, that's where in some of the people within the gun channels community have had these conversations at some of the rallies, especially when we hear, like, there was, I can't remember who it was. Someone was talking about here, I think it was the March for Life. They were in talking with somebody, and they were laying out facts and this kind of stuff. And then finally, after a few minutes, the person and trying, same rhetoric and ideas presented by the media again and again. After several minutes of more or less them not being able to convince the gun channels guy that guns are bad, they finally just got frustrated and said, what, I don't care what you say, whatever. I just want all guns banned, and they walked away. That is definitely what I would classify as one of the strong-willed anti-gunners, and that group will never be able to, chisel into that group. The only thing we can try to do is to educate those who are willing to listen, and hope that once they, become educated, that they can help us a little bit.
Yeah, you know what? And that's the reason I make videos pretty much on YouTube now. Instead of arguing people and sharing memes against people constantly, I've probably already been, after the election, I've probably already been followed by quite a bit of people. But more importantly, I just share these videos, and, sometimes I'll get someone who goes like, oh, I checked out the video. It looks pretty good. Sometimes I'll be talking to someone later about something completely different, and they're like, yeah, I watched that video. It's just, you got to grab people who are going to listen, and I figure coming against people with my own stuff, kind of talking out of my butt or talking out of my ass like I'm doing right now, it's much more genuine than writing a scripted, produced video. Because I had a couple people react as if I was, peddling the NRA's lies in my video about the AR-15 versus the 30-06 there. So, I just try to tell people, you gotta talk to these people. But you're right, though. I have a couple people on my friends list who think no civilian should own any guns, and I just talk liberty with people who are willing to listen, So I totally, I'm just enforcing the point you just made.
Right.
You got to talk liberty with people, man, because, I don't want to post hateful memes anymore. I mean, I'll post hateful memes where it's appropriate in different groups. And, there are some groups there are argument groups on Facebook. I don't know if you're aware of that, but I'll post those memes in there. I'll argue with people in there for fun, but I'm not looking to argue with people. I'm just looking to have open conversations with people who are willing to listen. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah, exactly. You know what? Do you have anything else you wanted to add? Because I know I'm pretty well out of ideas for tonight. So,
no. 30 Clipazine said his 308 or his 12 gauge slug have way more power. He also says he's got a 31 cal Colt pocket pistol from the Civil War. It's the only gun he owns that may have killed people. Vanessa was talking about people taking guns from law-abiding citizens. I'm just kind of looking through. I wonder if Mad Sexy is enjoying his dinner. But, that's about it.
Yeah, that's for small channels. So we only had a handful of viewers tonight, but I do appreciate those who stopped by. Did you have anything you wanted to plug before we took off?
Yeah, get on Instagram. Check out Grim90. Check out other gun channels members. Obviously, you can plug, Clover Tack, Ghost Tactical. You, obviously, we're on your channel. My channel is Rupan RX. I've posted some comments. Check out some of my videos. Throw me a comment. Tell me I suck. If you think I suck, tell me if I'm good, if you like it or whatever. Just check it out. I'll say something so you can check my channel out. Thanks for having me, Calaveras. I appreciate it. And
No, that's where
I gotta go.
Go ahead.
No, it's all set.
You were bringing up some fantastic points in the chat that neither Jelsma or I could touch on, so I thought that you were it'd be good to bring you on, and you definitely didn't disappoint. But yeah, that's for as for my plugs for tonight. I appreciate people stopping by. Definitely go check out Gun Channels. It's free to join. Anyone who isn't over there already, which I'm sure, I don't imagine there's too many people on here that aren't. But it's just one of those good communities where you can have conversations, and there's not just guns over there. There's geek stuff. There's we've had entire conversations about over Travis P11's Honda, and you go into the lobby chat. It may not be G rated, so definitely take a listen before you let your kids into it. But other than that, that's all I have for tonight, and I appreciate everyone stopping by.